I want to bring in former Obama White House Communications Director Jen Palmieri, former Obama White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations and Campaign Manager for Obama 2012's reelection, Jim Messina, and former press secretary to former House Speakers John Boehner and Paul Ryan, MSNBC political analyst Brendan Buck. Great to have all of you here. So, Jen, and I guess there, because you're not here with me, but Jen, how do you Dems keep this going?
Well, I think that what the results sort of reflect is real unhappiness with both the economy and the way Trump is running the country, right? I mean, I've never seen anything like this. There was a 90% swing from Republicans to Democrats for voters who thought that the economy was the most important issue, right? So it's sort of grounding to remind us this is why Trump won. Trump won because people were worried about the economy, thought it was better under him in the first term, and that he would do a better job. And that clearly the results say that he is not doing that. And I think that so it shows you that the enthusiasm is out there to register a vote against what he's trying to do. When Democrats pick in all three states or jurisdictions, especially New York City, when Democrats pick candidates that people are excited about, talking about the issues that matter in people's lives, they will turn out and they will vote for Democrats.
So, Jim, you're perfect here because you've spent probably more adult hours of your life than you care to ever count analyzing exit polls, other kinds of data, and then turning that into action, right? So what does last night and what of what you've seen from last night's exit polls tell you about how Democrats should be approaching the midterms?
Well, a couple things, Chris. I think the biggest thing is, the big tent Democratic Party's back. Mondani in New York City and Spanberger in Virginia belong to very different wings of the Democratic Party, but both of them had a really deep focus on affordability and cost of living. And when Democrats can do that, when they can respect what the voters want to hear about, when they go back to the middle and say, this is exactly what we want to do and how we're going to make your lives better, we win elections. And that is really important. The second thing is Donald Trump's numbers continue to be a real problem for him and his party. His disapproval on the economy is now 60%. I'm always focused, as you know, Chris, on these double haters, the voters who hate both parties.
Yeah.
And last night, they supported the Democrats by 60 points, Chris. And so right now they're saying, okay, I'm going to give the Democrats a chance. But the Democrats shouldn't get too excited about this. They've got to do in 2026 what the Democrats did in 2025, and that's stay really focused on affordability, cost of living, and producing a government that makes it better for people's lives in really clear and understandable ways. Put aside this fight in our party about should we be left, should we be right? None of that matters. Let's go focus on the voters who we want their vote, and let's go give them real deliverable policies.
So, Brendan, I don't know if you heard what the president had to his analysis. He says one of the biggest reasons, or maybe the biggest reason, that Republicans didn't win last night is because he wasn't on the ballot. Okay, he's not going to be on the ballot next year. What are the takeaways for Republicans as you see them?
Yeah, I mean, there may be something to that, especially looking ahead to a midterm election. And midterms are all about enthusiasm. How do you turn out voters who don't come out in a presidential election? And clearly, Democrats have enthusiasm. These rallies all across the country are a really good sign for them. Obviously, a huge warning sign for Republicans going into the next year. My advice here is Republicans need to get out of their bubble a little bit. Like, Donald Trump has had bad numbers for a while now, but he sure doesn't act like it. And they've been awfully cavalier politically. Look, you fire a bunch of federal workers, it's going to have an impact in Virginia. You cancel an important tunnel project, it's going to have an impact in New Jersey. There hasn't been a whole lot of acting like they need to worry too much about politics. And I think this morning, hopefully Republicans are going to wake up and realize they can't just kind of do whatever they want and get away with it just because Donald Trump is popular with a certain population within the Republican Party. I mean, we've said it before, affordability is going to be the key thing. And certainly maybe get a little get out of jail free card if the Supreme Court goes a certain way and they can drop this tariff thing, get an off ramp here, lower costs and show people that you care about this stuff instead of just assuming that because Donald Trump is a big political figure that he doesn't have the normal rules of politics apply to him. He clearly does. And we saw that last night.
You know, it's interesting to me, Jen. Politico summarized what we heard from voters our team talked to across the country, essentially with what you all are saying. The economy, the economy, the economy. Top issue in New Jersey, 32% of voters. In Virginia, it jumped to 48%. In New York City, 55% said the number one issue for them is the cost of living. Across all of these Democratic wins, the messaging did come down to affordability, affordability, affordability. But is it enough to say that? I mean, when you look at Mamdani, he came up with some pretty specific things, right? He had a plan. He didn't just say, I'm going to bring down the cost of eggs for you. He said, we understand you need to get to and from work. We're going to not only make buses free and subways free, but we're going to make them run better. Okay, well, that's whatever it is, $2.90, one way in New York City if you ride the subway or the bus, which may not seem like a lot of money, but he had a plan. So is there a second step for Democrats that they need to understand specific to wherever they're running?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I'm most familiar with Mikey Sherrill's race in New Jersey. And, she was very specific, in particular about utilities. And governors are in a good position to do that because there are concrete things that they can do either through the legislature or executive action, and mayors as well, to have an impact on people's lives. So the challenge is, if you're facing the midterms, how do Democrats do that are running in Congress where there's they have less of the ability to take a direct action? And that is why I think that the fight that they're undertaking in healthcare with this shutdown is the right one, because it is showing that is, there's in terms of expenses for people and what families are concerned about, rocketing healthcare premiums is one of the biggest ones. And, Democrats are showing that they're committed to finding a solution. And I think that they will. And I think that Obamacare subsidies will get extended, and that's going to help real families. And another time you might say for Democrats, hey, don't solve this problem for Republicans. Let the healthcare subsidies expire. Let the Republicans feel the pain for that, and let that be a political issue. But I think that is just wrong often, and particularly now, wrong-headed thinking, because Democrats want to show they can actually deliver. And if they can, if the people who are running and who are in Congress now and running for re-election can show that they delivered on healthcare prices and trying to keep rein that in, I think that's a big thing. But you're right, there has to be specifics to convince people, because credibility is such a big issue for any politician these days, to show people that you're serious and you had the means of helping them.
Yeah, and that you're going to stand up. At least, Jim, that's what the New Jersey governor-elect Mikey Sherrill had to say last night. Take a listen.
I think that's what our party has to do is really be strong in this moment, and then also be willing to take on the federal government, because we see Trump's economy going downhill fast, and voters know it. College students know it. Working class people know it. It is time for strong leadership from governors to make sure states can still thrive in this moment.
And we have seen, Jim, Democratic governors come out as some of the strongest foils to Donald Trump. Governor Newsom, for example. Is last night a signal to you that that's working?
Yeah, especially to Jen's point, if you can put really demonstrable policies. And Mikey Sherrill campaigned on a rate freeze for utilities. That's something that everyone understood what they got out of it. I think Democrats do bad when we want to fight on talking points, and we do much better when we want to fight on very clear policies. And governors and mayors are just in better positions to do that. They can be very specific about what they're doing. Janet Mills in Maine was amazing. You remember, Chris, she was the first governor to pick a fight with Donald Trump and said, I'll see you in court. I'm not going to let you do some of this stuff on the tariffs. And, that's been really politically popular for her because it was the right thing to do for her constituents. So it can't just be about fighting Donald Trump. It has to be about making people's lives better in really clear ways. And that's what Sherrill did with her rate freeze.
And Brendan, no surprise, Trump was clearly watching the results. He had a lot of posts in the very early morning hours, giving his analysis in real time, including a call to pass voter reform, voter ID, and mail-in ballots. I mean, he's telling us what he wants to do between now and next year's midterms. But is that helpful or a distraction for these candidates?
I mean, this all boils down to he thinks, the election is going to be stolen, which is probably the most unpopular thing he ever talks about. So hopefully Republicans are smart enough to know that's not a winning message. I think he's sort of banging his head against the wall with this filibuster thing. The Senate is not going to get rid of the filibuster, certainly to do some of these things that aren't going to help them politically anyway. Donald Trump is probably going to be a problem. He has his own unique view of what works and what sells, and that is often very disconnected from what real people care about. And that is going to be the tension for the rest of the year. Donald Trump is going to push them to do things that are potentially unpopular. The big tax bill that they passed earlier is really the only thing they have to show voters at this point, and that's frankly just not a very popular bill. And so they don't have a whole lot to work with. Donald Trump is very useful for the Republican Party when it comes to turning out voters when he's on it, but he also has a very myopic view of what sells. And so that's where Republicans are going to need to say, hey, look, we need to get focused on bread and butter issues, because this stuff that sells on the far right isn't what's going to make or break our majorities in the House and Senate.
Jen Palmieri, Jim Messina, and Brendan Buck, thank you all.